if you want to prove you are like an absolute master of the English language, the absolute worst thing you can do is try to sound smart.
Oh, yeah, completely. It's the ultimate irony, really.
Right. I mean, when you picture an advanced, highly fluent speaker, what do you see? You probably picture someone speaking at lightning speed, just dropping these massive $10 words to impress people.
Right, like they're a walking dictionary or something.
Exactly. But if you do that, you are actually actively destroying your fluency. According to our source guide today on mastering C1 and C2 English, true advanced fluency isn't about that at all.
No, it really isn't. We tend to equate mastery with sheer volume and velocity, Like we're treating conversation as a data dump.
Yeah, just throwing words at the wall.
Exactly. But if you listen to truly elite communicators, they don't sound like that. They just sound clear. They sound present in the conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission today is to take a deep dive into an advanced English fluency guide that completely redefines what it means to be a master communicator.
It really does shift the whole paradigm.
It totally does. We are going to explore how advanced English at those elite C1 and C2 levels is actually about clarity, subtle meanings, emotional intelligence, and using language to genuinely connect with people.
Yeah, and for those who maybe aren't super familiar with the terminology, C1 and C2 aren't just arbitrary grades on a test.
Right, they're part of that official framework.
Yeah, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the CEFR scale.
Yeah.
And back in the 90s when they made this, they designed the A levels for basic survival.
Like, where's the bathroom? Kind of stuff.
Exactly. And then the B levels were for functional independence. You can get by, you can work. But the C levels, that is where a speaker completely transcends just knowing the rules.
They start manipulating the language like an artist almost.
Right. Because at the C1 and C2 levels, the goal actually shifts from just merely understanding a language to reducing your mental translation time.
And increasing that intuition, right?
Yeah. Yes. Because this guide we are examining proves that language at this tier isn't just information transfer anymore. It's about psychology, empathy, and even identity.
So if advanced fluency isn't about memorizing massive vocabulary lists, how does the brain actually acquire this intuitive level of language?
Well, the answer lies in something that goes against basically all traditional advice.
Which is so fascinating to me, because the assumption is that to reach that elite C2 level, you need these grueling marathon study sessions.
Right, sitting down for 5 hours on a Sunday with like a stack of grammar textbooks and a highlighter.
Yeah, and just burning yourself out. But the cognitive science of advanced fluency says that's completely backward, doesn't it?
It absolutely rejects it. And it rejects it because of how the human brain actually wires itself.
Okay, wait, tell me about that, like the physical wiring.
Yeah, we have to look at neuroplasticity, specifically Hebbian learning. There's this foundational rule in neuroscience that says, neurons that fire together wire together.
Okay, neurons that fire together wire together. I've heard that.
So if you cram for 5 hours on a Sunday, and then you don't interact with the language again until the next Sunday, those neural pathways literally degrade.
Wow. So the brain just purges the information.
Basically, yeah. Because it doesn't see it as vital for your daily survival. It treats that massive data dump as a temporary emergency, not a permanent change in your environment.
So the answer isn't how long you study, it's how often you interact with the language in the real world.
Precisely. Researchers really highlight that consistent, short exposure is far more effective. You build fluency through daily micro-habits.
Micro-habits. Okay, give me some examples of that.
Well, it's things like listening to an audio lesson or a podcast when you're making breakfast, or reading a little bit before bed.
Or even just talking to yourself while you're cooking or driving to work.
Yes, exactly. Because every single time you do that, your brain learns through repetition, meaning, and context. It actually wraps a little more myelin around the axons in your neural pathways.
Myelin? Wait, what is that?
It's this fatty substance in the brain, and it basically acts like insulation on an electrical wire.
Oh, okay, so it speeds things up.
Exactly. The more myelin you build up through that daily repetition, the faster the electrical signals of language retrieval can travel.
And that increased speed is what finally eliminates that awful cognitive lag.
Yes, the lag is the worst.
Anyone who has learned a second language knows exactly what that lag feels like. Someone speaks to you, you translate it into your native language in your head, you formulate your reply, translate that back into English, and then you speak.
It's exhausting. You are essentially doing double the mental work for every single sentence.
So the ultimate goal at C1 and C2 is to just stop translating from a native language and let the ideas flow automatically.
Right. That translation lag is a symptom of relying on episodic memory, which is remembering the specific time you learned a rule, rather than procedural memory, which is automatic.
So you turn natural expressions from foreign to familiar to automatic.
Exactly. You start moving from stiff textbook replies to intuitive idioms.
Like saying on a regular basis or from time to time.
Or, as far as I'm concerned, you stop processing the individual grammar of those words, and they just become a single automatic block of meaning.
It's kind of like building a physical habit at the gym. You know, you wouldn't go to the gym for 7 hours on a Sunday and expect to get ripped. You go for 20 minutes a day.
That's a perfect analogy, actually.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. If we are just absorbing language naturally throughout the day, like muttering to ourselves in traffic, how do we make sure we aren't just absorbing bad habits?
That is a really great question, and it's the danger of uncalibrated immersion.
Right, because if no one is correcting me, I'm just cementing flawed English into my brain.
Yes, which is why the source emphasizes intentional daily exposure to native level flow. It's not about practicing your own mistakes in a vacuum. It's about bathing your brain in high-quality input.
Okay, so absorbing the specific rhythms and structures of native speakers.
Right. And when you do that intentionally, your brain naturally calibrates to complex structures without you having to, like, manually diagram the sentence.
A source mentions the more structure as an example of this.
Yes, relational grammar, like saying the more I listen, the more natural everything sounds.
Or the more I challenge myself, the more progress I notice.
Exactly. That's not a linear textbook formula. It shows a dynamic relationship between two changing variables. The brain just subconsciously maps that pattern through repeated exposure until it feels completely intuitive.
Okay, so daily exposure is key. But here is the massive problem. What happens when our daily exposure is completely dominated by modern technology?
The technology paradox.
Because modern tech actively encourages us to communicate less deeply, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Communication globally has changed drastically over the past decade. It's instant now.
Right, it's all short texts, voice notes, and like emojis.
Face-to-face, deep conversations are becoming so much less frequent. And because of that, people are naturally using shorter sentences and simpler expressions.
We are stripping the language down to its bare bones.
We really are. We are seeing a measurable syntactic degradation in daily communication. Subordinate clauses are disappearing,
But advanced C1 and C2 English demands the exact opposite of that.
Completely. It requires you to go way beyond short messages to express opinions, explain your reasoning, and actually structure complex thoughts.
The source guide has a great prompt for this. Instead of just saying something simple like technology is helpful, an advanced learner uses structured nuance.
Right, they have to actively fight that gravitational pull of texting culture.
Exactly. So they would say, on one hand, it allows me to stay in touch easily. On the other hand, I sometimes feel conversations have become less personal.
What's fascinating here is dissecting why structures like on one hand and the other hand actually show maturity in a speaker.
Why is that so crucial?
Because it proves the speaker can hold two competing ideas at once. That is a hallmark of deep intellectual fluency.
It's like linguistic juggling.
It really is. The cognitive demand is immense. You are using your prefrontal cortex to hold completely contradictory ideas in your working memory at the exact same time.
And weighing them verbally without losing the structure of the sentence.
Right. The source asks learners to answer complex questions, like whether social media makes conversations shallow, and it forces the learner to expand and justify those ideas.
But the fast pace of modern life makes that so hard. People always feel like they are constantly racing against time.
Or juggling multiple responsibilities, yeah.
And because we feel so rushed, we just abbreviate our thoughts. We don't want to do the heavy lifting.
Because deep thinking is metabolically expensive. The brain wants to conserve energy, so texting in abbreviations feels better. But advanced fluency requires you to slow down your cognitive processing.
You have to resist the urge to just drop the bottom line and actually walk the listener through your thought process.
Exactly. You have to build the architecture of the thought.
Navigating away from that shallow communication requires structure, absolutely. But all the beautiful sentence structure in the world means absolutely nothing if you are just talking at someone.
Right, if you were basically talking to a brick wall.
Which brings us to the forgotten half of the fluency equation, active listening and empathy.
This is huge.
Yeah.
Because the unfortunate truth is, many people listen only to reply.
Oh, totally. They're just waiting for their turn to speak without processing what the other person even means.
Right. They hold their breath until the other person stops making noise, just rehearsing their own reply in their head the whole time.
So active listening means actually hearing the words, the tone, the intention, and the emotion.
Empathy is a human skill that no app can replicate. And it is highly, highly valued in advanced communication.
I want to bring up a highly specific example from the text here, because if a colleague walks up to you and says, "I've been overwhelmed lately."
Okay, a very common scenario.
Right. A basic intermediate response is just, okay.
Which mechanically means you decoded the word overwhelmed and sent a receipt of acknowledgement.
But socially, it's terrible.
It is a catastrophic failure linguistically, yes.
Because the advanced empathetic response is, "I'm sorry to hear that. Is it because of work?"
Right. Or other empathetic phrases from the text like, "I can imagine how that must feel," or "I can relate to what you're saying."
Or even, "I've been meaning to ask how you are." Think about your own conversations right now. How often are you genuinely catching the underlying emotion versus just waiting to drop your own point?
It's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is. And here's where it gets really interesting. Empathy is framed here not just as like a nice character trait, but as a strict linguistic requirement for high-level fluency.
Because it activates entirely different centers of the brain.
Yeah.
When you use active listening, you're interpreting human emotion, not just translating words.
It's the psychology of communication.
Exactly. And tone changes absolutely everything. If you say, "Yes, I guess," with a downward flat tone, it sounds unsure, maybe even passive-aggressive.
But if you say, "I think that would work really well," with an upward inflection, it sounds confident and engaged.
And at the highest levels, reacting to those tone changes accurately proves you are actually interpreting the human being in front of you.
But once you are truly listening and you are catching those subtle emotional cues, you will inevitably encounter friction.
Oh, of course. Differing viewpoints are a part of life.
Right. So how does an advanced speaker handle disagreement without resorting to the bluntness that text speak encourages?
Well, expressing nuanced thoughts requires conversational tools that prevent you from sounding robotic, stiff, or honestly aggressive.
Because when you just bluntly say you are wrong, people freak out.
Right, because of the amygdala, the brain's fear center. It perceives aggressive conversational bluntness the exact same way it perceives a physical threat.
Wait, really? A verbal disagreement triggers the same response as a physical threat?
Yes. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline flows, and the prefrontal cortex, the part that handles logic and language, literally shuts down.
So they literally stop processing your words because they're preparing to fight you.
Exactly. So advanced speakers inherently soften their speech. They use phrases that show respect, even when they strongly disagree.
Dealing with uncertainty and disagreement is a massive part of real-world communication. Let's run through a toolkit of phrases provided in the source for navigating these tricky waters.
Let's do it. So for expressing complexity, you wouldn't just smash into the disagreement. You'd say, "It's a bit more complicated than it seems."
Or, "There are several factors to consider."
Right. You are laying groundwork. And for polite disagreement, you could say, "I see your point, but I'm not completely convinced."
"I respect your opinion, but I have a slightly different take."
Yeah, that's a great one.
My personal favorite is, "I wouldn't go that far, but I see your point."
Oh, that's brilliant. By validating them first with "I see your point," you signal to their amygdala that you aren't a threat.
I like to compare these conversational tools to the suspension system on a car.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, you could drive a car with no suspension, right? But you're going to feel every single bump and pothole in the road.
And eventually the car just tears itself apart.
Exactly. So phrases like, "To be honest, I've never thought about it that way," or "if I had to guess," those are the linguistic shock absorbers that make the ride smooth for everyone involved.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really ties into expressing complex emotions too, moving way beyond just saying "I'm happy" or "I'm angry."
Right, stating a nuanced internal state, like saying, "I feel conflicted about that."
Or "I'm cautiously optimistic."
Cautiously optimistic. That is such a specific feeling.
It is, and it's a brilliant example of higher order executive functioning. You are articulating dual conflicting emotional states simultaneously.
Holding hope and hesitation in the exact same breath.
Exactly. And when you express uncertainty, saying things like, "I'm not entirely sure, but I think," or "It's hard to say for certain, although my best guess is that,"
Yeah.
you are showing intellectual humility.
Or saying, "I'm feeling a little out of my depth." That emotional exactness is what actually resolves disagreements politely, isn't it?
It is, because the other person realizes you aren't attacking their idea, you're just navigating your own cognitive boundaries.
Being able to navigate disagreements gracefully requires a really delicate choice of words. And the way we choose those words is deeply influenced by the environment we find ourselves in.
Environment profoundly shapes communication style. Context dictates syntax, essentially.
Does your environment change how confident you feel speaking? Like, to the listener out there, are you more fluent at home than you are at work?
Most people are. A fast-paced city or, say, a hyper-competitive trading floor might make you speak directly and quickly.
Very blunt, rapid-fire communication.
But whereas cultures that value indirect politeness will encourage much gentler phrasing. If you take that trading floor bluntness into a polite culture, you will be perceived as incredibly rude.
So self-awareness of these patterns allows an advanced speaker to adjust their style dynamically.
Yes, it requires dynamic code switching, adjusting the dial on your directness based on the room you are in.
And one of the ultimate tests of this advanced fluency of reading the room is storytelling.
Oh, absolutely. Storytelling demands absolute control over tenses, transitions, and pacing.
The source gives some great transitional markers for this. Things like at first, after a while, or in the end.
And reflective framing, too, like saying, looking back, I realized that.
I love that one, because looking back, I realized that adds an entire layer of metacognition to the story.
Exactly. You aren't just reporting the facts of what happened. You are reporting your evolved understanding of those facts.
It makes the conversation so much richer. And doing this well means choosing precise vocabulary over needlessly complicated words.
Right. Accuracy over obscurity. Precise vocabulary is favored at the C2 level.
For instance, using crucial or significant instead of just saying very important.
Or using massive or substantial instead of very big.
And when you are expressing a negative preference, instead of the blunt, kind of childlike, I don't like it, you utilize phrases like, it doesn't appeal to me.
Or, it's not really my thing. It softens the blow and makes the rejection about your personal taste rather than an objective attack.
And all of this precision and storytelling culminates in what I think is the ultimate cognitive flex. Paraphrasing.
Oh, paraphrasing is staggering when you break down the cognitive mechanics of it. It's favored over repeating things word for word.
Because if someone says the book is about how people think, a basic learner just repeats that exact sentence. But an advanced learner adapts it to the book explores human thought and behavior.
Let's break that down, because what's happening in the brain is amazing. When you paraphrase, you take the auditory input, hold it in your working memory, and completely strip away the specific lexicon.
You discard the exact words they used.
Yes. You retain only the pure semantic core, the raw meaning, and then your frontal lobe searches your own internal lexicon for entirely new vocabulary to represent that meaning, and you rebuild the sentence from scratch.
You are taking the raw data of reality, running it through your own unique operating system, and projecting it back into the world.
Exactly. Paraphrasing isn't just a party trick. It proves you have fully digested the concept and can explain it through your own mental filter.
It proves you haven't just memorized a script.
It is the ultimate proof of intuition over translation.
So what does this all mean? When we bring this entire journey to a close and synthesize this deep dive, the guide reveals that reaching C1 or C2 fluency isn't a vocabulary test at all.
No, it isn't. It is a lifelong practice.
It's the neuroplasticity of daily microhabits. It's the battle against the syntactic degradation of texting. It's intentional listening, structuring layered arguments, choosing precise words, and showing genuine empathy.
Confidence in a language doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from consistency and the willingness to express yourself authentically.
Right. The goal is clarity and connection, not perfection.
Navigating complex human interactions with flexibility. That is true mastery.
Which leaves us with a final, I think, deeply provocative thought to mull over. If true, advanced communication relies so heavily on emotional intelligence, empathy, and active listening. Is it possible that many native speakers never actually achieve advanced communication?
Oh, wow. Despite having perfect grammar and huge vocabularies by birthright.
Exactly. Do they ever actually reach that level of true connection? And if so, how might that change the way you judge your own fluency from this day forward? You know that moment when you're like trying to change something fundamental in your life?
Oh, yeah, like learning a complex new skill
or overhauling your fitness routine, or even just trying not to react so poorly to everyday stress.
Which we all do.
Exactly. And you put in weeks of just intense effort, and you step back to look at your progress and you think, absolutely nothing has changed.
It's the absolute definition of a plateau.
Yep.
I mean, we are so conditioned to expect progress to look like a staircase.
Yeah, you put in the work, you take a visible step up.
Right. It's supposed to be clean, visible, linear. But stepping into the actual reality of personal development usually means that staircase completely disappears.
You just find yourself in this landscape where progress is, well, for a long time, totally invisible.
Completely.
And the difference between people who quit in that moment of invisibility and the people who eventually break through it often comes down to the literal vocabulary they use to describe their failure.
Which is such a wild concept.
It really is, and that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are taking a fascinating piece of source material, an excerpt from a guide titled Mastering Advanced English for Personal Growth and Resilience.
Great guide, by the way.
It is, and we're reverse engineering it. So we aren't just sitting here looking at a basic English language lesson. We are decoding how the specific, nuanced vocabulary used by advanced language learners actually serves as a masterclass in psychology.
And emotional intelligence.
Yes, and personal resilience.
Because language fundamentally shapes our reality. It's not just about, having a larger dictionary in your head to pull from at a cocktail party.
Right.
When we learn sophisticated ways to articulate our internal struggles, we actually equip ourselves to handle those struggles mechanistically.
I love that word, mechanistically.
Yeah, because the words we use, they provide the literal cognitive framework for how our brain processes an experience. If you change the vocabulary, you actually change the biological response.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to start with that universal barrier we just mentioned. The immense frustration of feeling totally stuck.
The plateau.
The plateau. The source material tackles this head on. It points out that fluency and success, whether in learning a language or, well, anything really, they come from consistent habits, not natural talent.
Exactly.
And the guide highlights two specific advanced phrases that just hit me hard. The first is, progress isn't always visible, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
That's a good one.
And the second is, growth often happens beneath the surface long before we notice it.
What's fascinating here is how those sentences are doing, like an incredible amount of heavy lifting, psychologically speaking.
How so?
Well, when someone is staring at a plateau, their brain is just screaming that their energy is being wasted.
Yeah, the default internal monologue is just, I'm failing.
Right, I am failing. But by shifting the language to growth happens beneath the surface, the speaker is actively overriding their brain's demand for immediate visual reward.
It makes me think about laying down cognitive train tracks.
Oh, I like that.
Because we usually visualize growth like a seed growing roots, which is fine, but it feels a bit passive to me.
Yeah, a seed just sort of sits there.
Exactly. Learning a complex skill or building resilience is more like doing the grueling physical labor of hammering steel rails into the ground.
Sweating in the dirt.
Right. You're swinging the hammer day after day in the hot sun. And to an outside observer, there's no train. There's no transit happening. It just looks like you're sweating in the dirt for nothing.
But you are building the essential infrastructure.
Yes. The invisible progress is the track. Once the steel is laid, the train can eventually run at 200 miles an hour.
I would actually push that metaphor even further, because the labor of laying that track requires a specific fuel source, and that is where people usually reach for the wrong tool entirely.
What do you mean?
Well, we have this cultural obsession with natural talent and endless motivation. We look at someone who is highly successful and assume they just have this, bottomless well of fiery motivation pushing them forward.
Right, like they wake up every day pumped to swing the hammer.
Exactly. But the source material explicitly pivots away from this. There's a crucial phrase in the guide. I've realized that discipline is more reliable than motivation.
Which begs the question, why do we romanticize motivation so much when the data and this advanced language guide points to discipline as the actual driver?
We romanticize motivation because motivation relies on dopamine. And dopamine feels incredibly good.
It really does.
A biological surge of energy. But, motivation is an emotion. And by definition, emotions are fleeting. They are highly dependent on external circumstances, like how well you slept.
Or what you ate for breakfast.
Right. Or whether someone annoyed you on your commute. If your infrastructure relies on motivation, your train tracks only get built on sunny days.
Wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Discipline, however, shifts the locus of control. It moves the process out of the emotional center of the brain and into the executive function.
So by using the phrase, discipline is more reliable than motivation, you are verbally stripping away the guilt of not feeling like doing the work.
Precisely. You're replacing an unpredictable emotional state with a reliable system.
You are using sophisticated self-reflection to acknowledge that the work will be unpleasant today and you're going to do it anyway.
It separates your identity from your current mood.
So if you are listening to this on your commute or at your desk right now, just think about something you have been trying to improve recently.
Yeah, anything.
Maybe you're trying to write a book or repair a relationship, or you're actually studying a language. When progress feels agonizingly slow, what is your internal monologue? Are you punishing yourself for not feeling motivated? Or are you acknowledging that you're laying down those heavy steel tracks and trusting the discipline?
And this is important. Relying entirely on discipline creates its own unique problem.
It sounds exhausting, honestly.
It is. It's an exhausting cognitive load. If you are constantly forcing yourself to do the work, you generate a massive amount of internal friction, which bleeds right into our modern experience of stress.
Which is exactly where the guide takes us next, naming the overwhelm. Because if we are relying on discipline every single day, the mental load gets really heavy.
Oh, absolutely.
The source notes that stress is an unavoidable byproduct of modern life. The pressures from work, from school, from endless social expectations.
Fair were.
Yeah, and they don't just affect our physical health, they fundamentally alter how we speak, how we think, and how we behave.
And when that stress peaks, the default human response is to use catastrophic language. We say things like, my life is a disaster, or everything is falling apart.
Or I'm completely losing my mind. I know I've said that one.
We all have. But the guide offers some very specific advanced phrases to replace that catastrophic language.
Things like, I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately, or I've been under a lot of pressure these days.
Or even just, I need to slow down and take a breather.
But the phrase that really anchored this section for me was simply, I'm doing my best to stay grounded.
That's a powerful one, because it raises an important question about how our nervous system actually listens to the words we speak. There is a well-documented psychological mechanism called affect labeling.
Okay, what is affect labeling in practice?
It is the process of putting your feelings into precise, measured words. Brain imaging studies show that when you see an angry face or experience a sudden stressor, your amygdala—
That's the brain's alarm system, right?
Exactly. The alarm system. It just lights up. It triggers the fight or flight response, pumping cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream.
The panic juice.
The panic juice, exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment you verbally attach a specific, accurate label to that emotion, like saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, the prefrontal cortex activates.
And that's the logical part of the brain.
Yes, the logical reasoning part. And as the prefrontal cortex engages to find the right word, it actively sends an inhibitory signal to the amygdala.
Wait, really? So just the act of finding the precise vocabulary word acts like a biological brake pedal for panic.
It physically turns down the alarm. When you catastrophize and say everything is ruined, your amygdala perceives an existential threat and keeps the alarm blaring.
But when you use a phrase from the guide like, I'm doing my best to stay grounded, you're naming the storm without letting it capsize the boat.
Beautifully put. The source explicitly points out that these sentences help express subtle emotions without sounding dramatic or unnatural.
So they don't just make you sound mature in an English conversation, they literally regulate your heart rate.
Exactly.
That completely reframes what it means to be articulate. Managing stress isn't just a practical skill like, doing deep breathing exercises or going for a run. It is very much a linguistic skill.
It's giving the emotion a proper name so it shrinks down to its actual size.
So for you listening, think about your biggest source of pressure this week. Maybe your inbox is overflowing, or your boss just handed you an impossible deadline. Does your internal voice scream that it's a disaster? Yeah, probably. But the next time that panic hits, try deploying affect labeling. Say out loud, I'm under a lot of pressure and I need to take a breather. See if you can feel the prefrontal cortex apply those brakes.
And once you downregulate that internal panic, once you stop the immediate fight or flight response, you are finally in a position to look outward.
And looking outward is where things get really complicated, because the world around us is messy.
Very messy.
It is full of conflicting information, polarized opinions, massive global shifts. If we want to engage with that world without our amygdala immediately firing back up, we have to use the language of nuance and contrast.
The source material places a huge emphasis on this. The necessity of showing balance and maturity when discussing complex issues. It highlights advanced contrasting structures.
Like what?
Phrases like, although I agree with that point, I think, or while that may be true, it's also important to consider, and simply, on the contrary.
Right. And the guide applies these structures to a highly relatable topic. Work-life balance. It suggests saying something like, although I understand the importance of working hard, I also believe that rest is essential. Without a healthy balance, productivity and well-being both suffer.
It also applies this to macro-level global issues. Things like, it's clear that globalization has brought both benefits and challenges. Or acknowledging that there's no simple solution, but open dialogue is a good starting point.
Notice how those structures require the speaker to hold two potentially opposing ideas at the exact same time.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I started thinking about this language of nuance, like having a dimmer switch installed in your dining room.
Dimmer switch, okay.
Yeah, because most of the time, especially in our digital lives or on social media, we operate on a very basic on-off switch.
Totally binary.
Right. You are entirely right or you're entirely wrong. A new policy is completely amazing or it is pure evil.
There's no in between.
Exactly. But words like although or while that may be true, and from a broader perspective, they act as that dimmer switch. They allow for a sliding scale of understanding.
I love that.
You can adjust the lighting in the room to actually see the fine details of the furniture rather than just blinding yourself with floodlights or sitting in total darkness.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason we default to that on-off switch is because of cognitive dissonance.
Oh, cognitive dissonance. Let's get into that.
The human brain loves efficiency. Holding two conflicting thoughts simultaneously, like acknowledging that a policy has both benefits and severe drawbacks, is metabolically expensive.
It literally burns cognitive energy.
It burns energy. The brain wants binary simplicity so it can make a quick judgment and move on.
So using advanced grammar literally forces the brain to spend the energy it wants to hoard.
Exactly. Using a phrase like, from a broader perspective, this issue is more complex than it appears, acts as a cognitive speed bump.
A speed bump, right.
You cannot physically structure a sentence with the word although and maintain an extreme polarized viewpoint. The syntax itself forces you to pause, acknowledge the validity of an opposing viewpoint, and then present your own.
You are linguistically binding yourself to rationality.
Yes.
So let's test your dimmer switch right now, listener. Think about a major shift in your own society. How has rapid technological advancement changed life in your country?
Big question.
Massive question. Do you think people today are happier because of constant connectivity, or are they more isolated and stressed? Is your society moving in a positive direction, or are you deeply concerned about the future?
And notice how incredibly difficult it is to answer those questions with a simple yes or no.
Right. If you try, you feel like you're lying because reality is just too messy for an on-off switch. You need those advanced linguistic structures to accurately map the territory.
And it is worth noting here that the source material isn't telling us what to think about globalization or technology or any political issue.
Oh, definitely not. It remains entirely impartial, and so are we.
Right. The focus is strictly on the mechanics of communication. It is about possessing the syntactical tools to be balanced, regardless of what the specific debate is about.
We aren't taking a side. We are ensuring we have the mental capacity to actually see all the sides without getting overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So let's trace our journey here. We have used vocabulary to master our internal discipline and lay down the tracks. We've learned to manage the friction of stress through affect labeling, and we've installed a dimmer switch to view a complex world without panicking.
It's quite a journey.
It is. But where does that leave the destination? What comes next?
We look forward. We take all of that linguistic infrastructure and use it to actively wire our future through mindset and ambition.
The source is very clear that a strong mindset helps you learn faster and handle inevitable challenges. It highlights phrases defining a resilient mindset, like, I'm learning to shift my mindset and focus on solutions rather than problems.
Or, I've been trying to view setbacks as opportunities for growth.
Right. The guide also explicitly notes the macro impact of this with the phrase, I've realized that mindset has a huge impact on how I experience challenges.
It's the culmination of everything we've discussed so far.
It really is. But I want to zero in on the specific phrases the guide uses to express future intentions.
Okay, let's hear them.
Things like, In the future, I hope to broaden my opportunities, and I'm planning to push myself out of my comfort zone. Now, I have to admit, I want to push back on the guide's use of the word hope here.
Really?
Because when I hear people talk about hope for the future, it often sounds incredibly passive.
Passive.
Yeah, it sounds like crossing your fingers, sitting on the couch, and hoping the weather is nice tomorrow. It just lacks drive.
Well, I disagree, especially in the context of advanced language acquisition. I think you're conflating hope as an idle wish with hope as a mechanism for executive function.
Okay, explain that. How is hoping for broader opportunities an executive function?
Look at the grammatical structure. It isn't, I hope things magically get better for me, where the speaker is just the passive recipient of the universe's goodwill.
Right.
The phrase is, I hope to broaden my opportunities, or I am planning to push myself. Linguistically, when hope is coupled with an active infinitive verb like to broaden or to push, it shifts the subject to the active agent.
Oh, I see.
It signals a high-level cognitive process where you are visualizing a future state, recognizing the gap between your current reality and that future state, and assigning yourself the responsibility to close it.
Ah, so it is highly active language disguised as a softer intention.
Yes.
It's like saying, I hope to be the one who does the broadening. It's about taking ultimate agency.
Precisely. These expressions perfectly demonstrate high emotional intelligence. By articulating future ambitions with that kind of grammatical clarity, a person sets a remarkably strong foundation for continuous growth.
You aren't just predicting the future, you're actively authoring it with your syntax.
Exactly that.
So what does this all mean? We have spent this time diving into what is ostensibly a guide on advanced English vocabulary, but we end up with something much larger than just a set of grammar rules.
Much larger.
The overarching takeaway from our deep dive today is that mastering this kind of language isn't just about passing a C1 or C2 proficiency test for your resume. It is about acquiring the literal cognitive frameworks you need to survive and thrive.
Because the words you choose aren't just descriptions of your reality. They are the architects of it.
The vocabulary builds the discipline to lay the tracks. It downregulates the amygdala to navigate the stress. It overrides cognitive dissonance to embrace nuance in a polarized world.
And it gives you the active agency to author your future.
Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought to consider as you go about the rest of your day.
Yeah, we've seen how precision in language dictates our ability to navigate setbacks and express ambition. So think about this. What deeply held goals or what scient-heavy struggles do you currently carry that you simply haven't found the exact right words for yet?
That is a profound question.
Think about it. Could finding that one perfect nuanced phrase be the very key to unlocking your next breakthrough?
Wow.
Maybe you aren't actually failing. Maybe you aren't truly stuck on a plateau. Maybe the roots are aggressively growing beneath the surface, and you just haven't found the vocabulary to describe the beautiful, invisible work you are already doing.
Imagine sitting in a sleek boardroom in London, or maybe you're at this bustling networking event in New York.
Oh yeah, we've all pictured that.
Right, and you've been studying English for years, perhaps even decades at this point. Your grammar is, absolutely flawless.
It's memorized all the rules.
Exactly. Your vocabulary is extensive enough that you easily passed all of those brutal standardized tests to get where you are.
Right, the ones that just drain your soul.
Yeah, exactly. But then you finally open your mouth to chime in on a joke, or, I don't know, to share a personal anecdote with a colleague. And you suddenly realize you sound like a textbook.
Yes. It's such a common experience.
Meanwhile, everyone else around the table just sounds like a relaxed human being. And it is this incredibly frustrating, almost isolating feeling.
It really is.
Because why does your vibrant, funny, nuanced personality completely vanish the second you switch into a new language?
It's a profound shift. I mean,
Right.
It really is. And it's a reality that hits almost anyone who crosses a certain threshold of fluency.
Like once you're past the beginner stage.
Yeah, because in the early days of language learning, your goals are purely functional. You just want to survive, basically.
You just need to order a coffee without insulting the barista.
Exactly. Or find the train station, or just pass a basic exam. But then you hit those advanced levels, what the linguistic frameworks call the C1 or C2 plateau.
Right.
This is where you are essentially fluent on paper. And suddenly, the challenge isn't about survival or conjugation anymore.
No, it's something way deeper.
It is. The challenge actually becomes an issue of identity.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating collection of excerpts from The Art of Authentic Self-Expression in Advanced English.
It's a great text.
It really is. And
Yep.
our mission for you today is singular.
Yeah.
We want to figure out how you can actually sound like your real authentic self in a second language.
Which is easier said than done.
Oh, totally. So we are completely skipping the grammar rules and the vocabulary list today. We don't need them.
Thank goodness.
Right. We are looking at the psychology of making that terrifying leap from being technically correct in English to developing the emotional intelligence required to capture your true personality.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I always think about this particular language plateau like this.
Let's hear it.
Speaking an advanced second language without your true identity is essentially like wearing a perfectly tailored suit that actually belongs to someone else.
Ooh, wow. That is a vivid way to frame it.
Think about it. Like, it looks technically correct to everyone else in the room, right? The measurements are technically right. The fabric is expensive.
Right, there are no grammatical wrinkles anywhere on the jacket.
Exactly. The outside world thinks you look great, but inside, you feel completely unnatural moving in it.
It's stiff.
Yeah, the shoulders are just a bit too stiff. The collar pinches when you turn your head. You just can't relax.
You can't just be you.
Right, you're constantly aware of the fabric.
And what's fascinating here is that the principles of authentic self-expression explicitly validate this exact experience.
Wait, really? They validate it?
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling stiff or formal or emotionally disconnected isn't a sign that you are failing at the language.
Okay, that's a relief to hear.
It really is.
Yeah.
It isn't a sign that you need to go back and study more flashcards, you know. It is actually a completely normal, completely necessary developmental phase in advanced learning. You have successfully mastered the mechanics of the language, which is a massive achievement.
Huge.
But now, true mastery is ultimately an exercise in reclaiming your personal identity. To borrow your metaphor, you have to learn how to take in the seams and adjust the cuffs of that suit until it belongs to you.
I love that. And to make that borrowed suit actually fit, it seems we first have to understand what creates that massive disconnect between our native self and our English self in the first place.
Exactly. Where does the friction come from?
Right, because the research points out that identity in language isn't just a matter of swapping out a Spanish word for an English word or a Japanese phrase for an English one.
No, it's way more complex than just translation.
It is. Everything we say is heavily filtered through our cultural background. It's this invisible psychological framework running in the background of every interaction.
It is the operating system of our social world.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, culture shapes not just how we communicate, but how we interpret every single message we receive and how we view reality itself.
So when you switch languages,
When you are operating in advanced English, you are suddenly forced to navigate entirely new cultural nuances.
like what?
Well, for example, if we look at the mechanics of expression, English, particularly in Western business or social contexts, often relies heavily on direct communication.
Right.
You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. But what if the learner comes from a deeply indirect culture? Culture where meaning is conveyed through context, through silence or through subtle implications.
Right. In those cultures, explicitly stating your feelings might be seen as aggressive or at the very least just socially clumsy.
Precisely. And this is where I want you, the person listening right now, to really reflect on your own background.
Yeah. Think about your default settings.
Exactly. How does your specific culture influence your default communication style? Do you come from a place where emotions are expressed loudly and openly in public, or are they kept intensely private?
Because that changes everything.
It does, because the pathway to sounding like yourself in English requires using highly introspective frameworks.
Like the phrases mentioned in the text actually pulled some of them.
Oh, great. Let's hear them.
Things like, I'm the kind of person who, or one thing people often misunderstand about me is, and what really matters to me is.
Yeah, those are powerful.
But just hearing those phrases out loud, you immediately realize the vulnerability they require.
Oh, absolutely.
If you come from a culture where emotions are private, forcing yourself to say what really matters to me is in English might feel incredibly jarring.
It feels like a violation of your own rules.
Right. Your brain is throwing up red flags, telling you this is oversharing, even if your English pronunciation is flawless.
Let's ground this in a highly relatable scenario for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you are at a networking event and an acquaintance asks you a somewhat personal question about your career ambitions or your family.
Pretty standard stuff in an English-speaking context.
Right. But depending entirely on your cultural background, your instinct might be to deflect, to politely say, I'd rather not talk about that.
Sure.
Or your instinct might be open disclosure, saying, oh, sure, let me explain.
And both are technically right.
Both of these responses are perfectly grammatically correct. Both are completely natural in English.
Right.
But the friction you feel in your chest when choosing one over the other, that has nothing to do with vocabulary. That depends entirely on your native cultural programming.
Okay, I hear that, but I'm looking at this from the perspective of an introverted learner right now, and I have to push back a little bit.
Sorry, go for it.
If my native culture is deeply indirect, and I suddenly start adopting this direct, highly assertive communication style that is so common in English-speaking environments, aren't I just faking a personality?
That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah. Am I sacrificing my authentic self just to fit into a new cultural mold?
That is the crucial tension of advanced language learning right there. And the answer is absolutely not.
Okay, good.
You are not losing yourself. You are simply expanding your toolkit.
Expanding the toolkit.
Yes. This is the difference between blindly mimicking native speakers and actually inhabiting the language.
How so?
When you understand the why behind these cultural nuances, it allows you to choose expressions that feel safe and comfortable for you, rather than just reciting phrases you memorized from a textbook.
How does that work in practice, though? Like, how do you stay true to an indirect identity while using a direct language?
By understanding the function of the phrase in the new operating system.
Function over form.
Exactly. If you know your native instinct is to be indirect, you can consciously analyze an English phrase and say, okay, in this culture, saying, I'd rather not discuss that isn't considered rude. It's considered a clear, healthy boundary.
Oh, I see.
Because you understand its function, you can choose to use it without feeling like you are betraying your personality.
Yeah.
You are still in complete control.
You are still the one setting the boundary.
Exactly. You are just using a different mechanical tool to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It is about conscious, strategic choice, not cultural erasure.
Man, that reframing is huge. It completely takes the guilt out of adapting.
It really does.
So once we recognize our cultural filters and how they operate in the background, the immediate practical challenge is applying them in real time.
Yes, the real world.
Because it's one thing to analyze this in a quiet room, right? It is entirely different to maintain that authentic identity when a conversation is moving at 100 miles an hour.
Or worse, when you hit a pothole and the conversation gets uncomfortable.
Exactly. Real-time application is where theory meets reality.
And the ultimate goal here is maintaining the flow of the conversation without ever sacrificing your personal boundaries.
What really fascinated me about researching this text is how, as language learners, we are actually taught the wrong way to achieve that conversational flow for years.
Oh, we are set up to fail.
We really are. Think about it. Teachers spend years telling students to strip out all their hesitations. Don't say, don't pause, just speak smoothly.
Worst advice.
Right. But the mechanics of authentic expression reveal that speaking smoothly and naturally actually relies heavily on conversation fillers.
They are essential.
These are not mistakes or signs of a poor vocabulary. They are highly strategic, native-level tools.
They are structural load-bearing elements of natural speech.
Load-bearing. I love that.
It's true. When you are processing a second language, your cognitive load is immense. You are translating concepts, navigating cultural filters, and monitoring your pronunciation all at the same time.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Exactly. Conversation fillers are the pressure valve for that cognitive load.
It makes so much sense when you look at the actual phrases used by native speakers. Things like, let me think for a second, or if I'm being completely straightforward.
Yeah, or even just, well, the thing is.
Right. We often view these as crutches, but they are actually doing heavy lifting.
They buy your brain crucial milliseconds. They allow you to hold the conversational floor, meaning nobody interrupts you while your brain catches up and formulates the authentic thought.
That is so smart.
And this becomes exponentially more critical when we look at the friction side of communication. Think about a time when a conversation involved conflict.
Oh, let's put you, the listener, right in that scenario. Think about the last time a colleague or a friend strongly disagreed with you in English.
A nightmare scenario for a learner.
Right. Did your heart rate spike? Did you suddenly freeze up because you couldn't find the culturally polite way to say you're completely wrong fast enough?
Yes.
The instinct for so many learners is to just nod and agree. effectively abandoning their true opinion just to escape the friction of the language barrier.
Exactly. And that is a moment where your identity vanishes.
Because you couldn't defend it.
Real-time fluency is deeply intertwined with emotional intelligence. How do you handle disagreements respectfully when your brain is already working overtime?
That's the million-dollar question.
The key is having a toolkit of boundary-setting phrases ready to deploy. When you use a phrase like, I see your point, but I have a different perspective, or I'm not comfortable with that, to be honest, you are neutralizing the panic.
I look at conversation fillers and these boundary phrases like the suspension system on a car.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you are driving a car with no suspension, every single bump in the road jars your bones. You have to drive incredibly slowly just to survive.
Sure.
In a conversation, an unexpected question or a sudden disagreement is a pothole. Without fillers, you hit that pothole, you freeze, you panic, and the conversation crashes.
It comes to a dead stop.
But with those phrases, your brain has a moment to absorb the shock. The ride feels completely smooth to the passenger who is the listener, and you get to keep driving the car. So what does this all mean for the learner?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ability to absorb those bumps, to protect your personal boundaries calmly while maintaining conversational flow, is the ultimate marker of C1 and C2 maturity.
It's the holy grail.
It really is. Let's break down the mechanics of a phrase like, I see your point, but I have a different perspective.
Okay.
When you say that, you are doing three highly complex things simultaneously. First, you are validating the other person's reality, which demonstrates high emotional intelligence.
And I feel heard.
Second, you are firmly asserting your own boundary, which protects your authentic identity.
You aren't backing down.
Exactly. And third, you are doing it with linguistic precision, without escalating the conflict. You aren't just reacting out of panic. You are responding from a grounded sense of self.
That is incredibly empowering. It means you don't have to shrink yourself or agree with everyone just because you are nervous about your English.
You have the structural tools to hold your ground.
And mastering this present moment, this flow and friction, actually gives us the confidence to do something much, much deeper.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the research.
It's so good. The research shifts into this concept of narrating our ongoing life story. It posits that advanced language is essentially a form of time travel.
Time travel.
Yeah. It allows us to seamlessly connect our past experiences, our current transitions, and our future ambitions into one cohesive identity.
Because the ability to narrate the arc of your life is the foundation of expressing who you actually are.
Anyone can recite a resume.
Exactly.
Right.
But moving from simply stating what happened to you to explaining how it felt and why it matters today requires a completely different level of linguistic depth.
Let's look at how we talk about the past. To move beyond a basic timeline, we need phrases that show active reflection. Expressions from the text like, in hindsight, I realized that. Or, growing up, I didn't fully appreciate. Or even, that experience had a significant influence on who I am today.
Notice the mechanism at work in those phrases.
What do you mean?
Well, you are not just recounting dry facts. You are interpreting your own history for the listener.
You're providing the context.
You are signaling emotional maturity. And that naturally flows into how we articulate the present, specifically regarding change.
Because life is messy right now.
Exactly. Life is not static. It is a series of constant adjustments. Acknowledging that transition is vital. Using phrases like, I'm still adjusting to the new situation, or it was a big transition, but I handled it step by step.
There's so much resilience built into those specific words.
There really is.
It shows the listener that you are right in the messy middle of a process, but you possess the self-awareness to articulate it calmly.
Which is huge for authenticity.
And then, of course, we time travel to the future, expressing our ambitions with clear, confident direction.
Setting the trajectory.
Right, saying things like, I'm working toward improving my long-term career prospects. Or a goal I think everyone listening can relate to. I want to reach a point where I can express myself effortlessly in English.
By linking those three eras, the reflective past, the resilient present, and the ambitious future, you invite the listener into your internal landscape.
You become three-dimensional.
You are no longer just an English student to them. You are a fully realized human being with a trajectory.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the hidden psychology of doing this in a non-native tongue.
Let's dive in.
When we use these reflective phrases to time travel, like describing a deeply personal past turning point or a really painful current transition, does the emotional distance of a second language actually change the way our brains process that memory?
That is a brilliant question, and it strikes at the core of bilingual psychology.
Does it change things?
Yes, it absolutely does change the processing. When you describe a childhood event using a structured, learned phrase like, "In hindsight, I realized that," you are operating in a language that likely doesn't carry the raw, visceral, immediate emotional weight of your mother tongue.
Oh, that makes sense.
The language you learned as an adult doesn't have the same childhood emotional baggage attached to its vocabulary.
So wait, is that emotional distance a good thing or a bad thing for authenticity?
It can be a massive advantage.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That slight psychological distance often provides a profound sense of objectivity. It allows you to analyze your own past with clarity, rather than just being swept away by the raw emotion of the memory.
Wow. It's like you're a therapist for yourself.
It helps you frame your past, present, and future in highly nuanced, thoughtful ways. And this is the secret mechanism that builds true emotional fluency.
That is amazing.
It moves you from just surviving a conversation to actively sharing your worldview.
It really is the difference between handing someone your paper resume and actually sitting down across the table, looking them in the eye, and telling them the story of your life.
Precisely. And that is why these specific reflective tools are so powerful. They signal to the listener and, more importantly, to yourself, that you are fully present, deeply self-aware, and entirely comfortable in your own skin.
Regardless of the cultural operating system.
Exactly, regardless of the system you happen to be using at that moment.
This all circles back so beautifully to the core takeaway from everything we've looked at today.
It really does tie it all together.
Reaching the pinnacle of advanced English, the C1 and C2 levels, isn't about memorizing the biggest, most complicated vocabulary words you can find in a thesaurus.
Please don't do that.
Right. It is never about trying to sound like an academic paper. It is fundamentally about depth.
Depth and clarity.
It's about emotional clarity.
Yeah.
And it's about developing the structural confidence to express your true personality, your boundaries, and your lived experiences in a way that feels completely natural to you.
It is about doing the hard introspective work to trade in that borrowed suit for one that you have painstakingly tailored yourself.
Stitch by stitch.
Stitch by stitch, until it moves exactly the way you do.
I love that. So, for you listening right now, we want to leave you with a challenge.
A little homework.
Just a little bit. Sometime today, when you have a quiet moment, we want you to think through a recent change in your life.
Big or small.
Right. It could be a massive shift, like a new job or moving to a new city, or it could be something as small as a shift in your daily routine. But here is the catch. We want you to do the internal reflection entirely in English.
Don't translate it in your head first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Use the mechanical tools we've explored today. Think to yourself, it was a big transition, but I handled it step by step. Or, in hindsight, I realized.
Feel the words.
Actually feel what it is like in your body to process your real life through the lens of this new language.
It is an incredibly revealing exercise. And as you do that, as you sit with those English thoughts, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Okay, lay it on us.
We've spent this entire deep dive unpacking how to effectively express your true self in a second language.
Right.
But this raises an important question. If language inherently shapes the way we perceive the world and the way we interpret reality, then by mastering authentic self-expression in a completely new cultural operating system, simply revealing your true self, or are you actually creating an entirely new version of yourself?